Okay, so you want to land a data science job at Google.
Hmm.
That's fantastic. And let's be honest, pretty ambitious.
Yeah.
You've sent us a mountain of info on Google data science interview questions.
Yeah.
And wow, it's a lot to sift through.
It is.
Don't worry, that's why we're here. Think of this deep dive as your cheat sheet to the most valuable insights from all this material.
It's really interesting how these interview questions offer a glimpse into what a company truly values.
Yeah.
Google, being the data giant they are, obviously emphasizes a strong understanding of machine learning, statistics, and coding.
Right.
But it goes beyond that. They're also looking for that product sense.
Yeah.
Someone who understands how to apply data science to solve real-world business problems.
Yeah. It's not just about knowing algorithms. It's about knowing how to use them to make Google search better,
Right.
or fine-tune YouTube recommendations, or even help develop self-driving cars.
Yeah.
Okay, so imagine you've just submitted your application, and you've got that email inviting you to the first step, the technical phone screen.
Okay.
What kind of machine learning questions can you expect?
Well, one of the most fundamental concepts they'll likely test you on is supervised versus unsupervised learning.
Okay.
But let's go beyond just definitions. Think about Google Translate.
Right.
It learns to translate languages by being fed millions of examples of text in different languages. That's supervised learning in action. The model learns from labeled data.
Ah, so it's being supervised because it's given the right answers during training.
Exactly. Now think about Google Photos.
Okay.
It can group your pictures based on faces even if you haven't labeled them. That's unsupervised learning.
Okay.
The model finds patterns and structures in data without explicit labels.
So in a phone screen, they might ask how these concepts apply to specific Google products.
Absolutely. They want to see that you can connect the dots between theoretical concepts and real-world applications.
Yeah.
Another key concept that often comes up is overfitting. Overfitting.
Imagine you're building a self-driving car that's trained only on sunny California roads.
Okay.
It might ace its tests on those familiar routes, but completely fail when faced with snow or even just a detour. That's overfitting. The model has memorized the training data instead of learning the underlying principles of driving.
So it's like that student who crams for a test and gets an A,
Yeah.
but then completely blanks when faced with a slightly different question on the final exam.
Perfect analogy. And overfitting is a big problem for Google.
Right.
Think about their search algorithms. They need to be able to generalize to billions of different search queries, not just the ones they've seen before.
Yeah.
So they use techniques like regularization,
Regularization.
which is kind of like adding a penalty to the model for getting too complex.
Regularization. How does that actually work in practice?
It's a way of simplifying the model to prevent it from getting too fixated on the training data.
Okay.
For example, they might limit the number of factors that the search algorithm considers when ranking websites.
This helps ensure that the algorithm is more robust and can handle new unseen queries effectively.
So they're basically preventing the model from becoming a know-it-all and instead encouraging it to focus on the most important patterns.
Precisely. They also use techniques like early stopping,
Really stop it.
which means halting the training process before the model becomes too specialized to the training data.
Okay, so if I'm prepping for this phone screen, should I just memorize definitions of overfitting, regularization, and early stopping?
Not at all.
No.
They'll want you to explain these concepts in your own words, and more importantly, demonstrate how they apply to real Google products or challenges.
Okay.
For example, you might be asked to explain how you'd prevent overfitting in a model designed to personalize Google News recommendations.
Okay.
Be prepared to discuss specific techniques and how they relate to Google's goals.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's really about showing them that you understand the nuances of these concepts and can apply them in a practical way.
Exactly. Now, let's say you've aced the phone screen and you're invited for the on-site interviews.
Oh boy.
Here's where it gets even more interesting.
The on-site interviews. Bring on the coding challenges.
Hold on, before we dive into the coding, remember that Google really emphasizes statistical thinking. One concept you'll want to have a solid grasp on is the central limit theorem.
Okay.
Think of it like this. Let's say you want to figure out the average amount of time people spend watching YouTube videos per day. You can't ask everyone on the planet, right?
Definitely not, although that would be a fun job.
Right. So you take a sample of, say, 1,000 YouTube users.
Okay.
The central limit theorem basically says that if you take enough samples like this,
Right.
the average of those sample averages will be very close to the actual average watch time for all YouTube users, even if the individual watch times are all over the place.
So even if some people binge watch for hours and others just watch a quick clip,
Yeah.
The average of those averages will give you a pretty accurate picture of the whole population.
Exactly. And the distribution of those sample averages will look like a nice familiar bell curve.
Okay.
Google uses this theorem all the time to make inferences about massive data sets from a smaller sample, which is crucial for understanding user behavior search patterns, and so much more.
It's like taking a small taste of a giant cake and being able to tell if the whole thing is chocolate or vanilla.
I love that analogy. Now, another statistical concept that Google interviewers love to test is hypothesis testing.
Hypothesis testing.
Imagine you're working on a new feature for Google Maps, and you want to see if it actually improves user satisfaction.
Okay.
You run an A/B test
Uh-huh.
where some users get the new feature and others don't.
Okay.
Then you collect data on things like how often people use the new feature and how they rate their experience.
So you're basically trying to see if the new feature makes a real difference,
Right.
or if any changes are just random fluctuations.
Right. And that's where the p-value comes in.
Yeah.
It's a way of measuring how likely it is that you'd see the results you got, even if the new feature actually had no effect.
You mentioned the p-value is crucial, but honestly, I always struggled with understanding its real-world significance. Can you give me an example of how Google might use p-values to make important decisions?
Sure. Let's say Google is testing a new algorithm for displaying search results.
Okay.
They run an A/B test and find that the new algorithm leads to a small increase in click-through rates.
Okay.
But is that increase actually meaningful, or could it just be due to chance? That's where the p-value comes in. If the p-value is very small, say less than 0.05, it means it's highly unlikely that they would have seen that increase if the new algorithm had no effect.
Okay.
This gives them confidence that the new algorithm is actually an improvement.
So it's like a safety check to make sure they're not jumping to conclusions based on flimsy evidence.
Exactly. And speaking of evidence, let's move on to the part everyone's been waiting for, the coding challenges.
Okay, finally. Let's talk code. What kind of questions can I expect? Is it going to be like those brain-bending coding puzzles you see online?
Well, they'll definitely test your algorithmic thinking and your ability to write clean, efficient code. One type of question you might encounter is about fundamental data structures like stacks.
Stacks. Like a stack of pancakes.
Pretty much. Imagine a stack of plates. You
Yeah.
can only add a new plate to the top,
Uh-huh.
and you can only take a plate from the top. That's the basic principle of a stack. Last in, first out.
Okay, I get the analogy. But why is understanding stacks important for a Google data scientist?
Well, stacks are used in a lot of different algorithms and applications, even beyond Google. For example, think about the undo function in a text editor. Each action you take is added to a stack, and when you hit undo, the last action is popped off the stack, effectively reversing it.
So it's like a time machine for your text editor.
Exactly. And at Google, stacks might be used in things like parsing search queries or managing function calls within their massive code base. They're a fundamental building block of computer science.
Interesting. So knowing how to implement a stack is like having a Swiss Army knife in your coding toolkit. It's a basic tool that can be used in a variety of ways.
That's a great way to put it. Now let's move on to another type of coding challenge. You might encounter algorithm-based questions.
Okay.
They might ask you to do something like reverse a string or find the factorial of a number.
Those sound like classic computer science problems, so they're really testing my foundational knowledge.
Exactly. But it's not just about memorizing algorithms. It's about understanding how they work.
Okay.
Being able to explain your thought process clearly and writing clean, efficient code that's easy to understand and maintain.
So they're not just looking for a coding robot. They're looking for someone who can think critically and communicate their ideas effectively. Speaking of thinking critically, did any of the coding questions stand out as particularly challenging? One that caught my eye was about finding the longest increasing subsequence in a list.
Okay, I have to admit, I'm drawing a blank here. What's
Yeah.
a longest increasing subsequence? It's a sequence of numbers within a larger list where the numbers are in increasing order, but they don't have to be consecutive. For example, in the list 1, 3, 2, 4, 5, the longest increasing subsequence is 1, 2, 4, 5.
Ah, I see. And why is this problem so tricky?
Well, solving this efficiently often involves dynamic programming, which can be a pretty challenging concept.
Yeah.
Dynamic programming is all about breaking a problem down into smaller subproblems and storing the solutions to those subproblems to avoid redundant calculations. It's a powerful technique, but it can be tricky to wrap your head around.
Sounds like something that could make even seasoned coders sweat a bit.
It definitely could. Being able to solve a dynamic programming problem like this in an interview setting shows that you can think abstractly, break down complex problems, and write efficient, optimized code.
I can already feel my brain getting a workout.
Mm-hmm.
So we've covered machine learning, statistics, and coding. What else can I expect from these on-site interviews? Is there anything else they're looking for?
Well, beyond the technical skills, Google really cares about what they call product sense.
Product sense.
And this is where things get really interesting. But let's save that for part 2.
Okay, you've got me hooked. I can't wait to dive into that. All right, we're back and ready to tackle part 2 of our Google Data Science interview, Deep Dive.
Okay.
You've heard about the phone screen, the emphasis on machine learning and stats,
Right.
and even got a taste of those coding challenges.
Yeah.
But before you start practicing your dynamic programming skills,
Right.
we need to talk about something just as important as technical chops.
You're talking about product sense.
Product sense.
It's not just about knowing data science. It's about understanding how to apply it within the context of Google's products and business goals.
Right, because at the end of the day, Google is a company, not a university. They're not hiring data scientists just to write elegant algorithms in a vacuum.
Right.
They need people who can solve real-world problems and make a real impact on their products and services.
Exactly. And this is where the on-site interviews really dig deep into your product sense. Imagine you're sitting across from a Google interviewer and they ask, how would you improve YouTube's recommendation system?
Oh.
You can't just rattle off a list of algorithms. You need to think like a product manager.
So what would you do if you were hit with that question? Walk me through your thought process.
Well, the first thing I'd do is try to understand YouTube's goals.
Okay.
Are they trying to maximize watch time, increase user engagement, promote certain types of content? Once I have a clear understanding of their objectives, I can start thinking about how data science can help them achieve those goals.
So it's not just about the coolest algorithm. It's about aligning your data science skills with the company's strategic priorities.
Absolutely. And then I'd start thinking about the data that's available. YouTube has a treasure trove of information about users' viewing history,
Right.
likes, dislikes, subscriptions, and so much more. The key is to figure out how to use that data to create a recommendation system that serves both the user's needs and YouTube's goals.
That sounds like a pretty challenging balancing act. How would you approach that?
There are lots of different techniques you could use, like collaborative filtering, where you look for patterns in users' viewing habits to recommend videos that similar users have enjoyed, or content-based filtering, where you analyze the content of videos to recommend similar ones. But the key is to think critically about which techniques would be most effective in the context of YouTube's specific goals and data.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
So you're not just throwing algorithms at the problem. You're really thinking strategically about how to tailor your approach to the specific situation. What other kinds of product sense questions might come up in these interviews?
Another common theme is user engagement. They might ask you something like, how would you increase user engagement on Google Maps? Again, you need to think beyond just technical solutions and consider the user experience.
That raises an interesting point. It's not just about making the algorithm smarter. It's about understanding what motivates people to use a product in the first place.
Exactly. So you might think about things like making the interface more intuitive, adding new features that people actually find useful, or even personalizing the experience based on individual preferences.
This is starting to feel less like a technical interview and more like a product strategy brainstorming session.
Well, that's the beauty of data science at Google. It's not just about crunching numbers. It's about using data to make informed decisions that impact millions of users.
So it's not just about having a deep understanding of algorithms. It's about being able to apply that knowledge in a creative and strategic way.
Precisely. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about another challenge that often comes up in these interviews, dealing with missing data.
Oh, missing data.
Yeah.
The bane of every data scientist's existence.
Yeah.
I imagine even Google has to deal with this problem from time to time.
Absolutely. No data set is perfect, and missing data can be a real headache.
Yeah.
They might ask you something like, you're working with a data set of user reviews, but some reviews are missing ratings. How would you handle this?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Honestly, my first instinct would be to panic.
Yeah.
But what's the right way to approach this?
Well, panicking is never the answer. There are a few different approaches you could take. One option is to simply ignore the rows with missing data. But this can be problematic, especially if there's a pattern to the missing data. For example, what if users who had negative experiences are more likely to leave reviews without ratings? Ignoring those reviews could bias your analysis.
That's a really good point. So what's a better approach?
Another option is imputation, which is basically filling in the missing values with something else.
Okay.
There are lots of different imputation methods, each with its own pros and cons. For example, you could replace the missing ratings with the average rating for that particular item.
Uh-huh.
Or you could use a more sophisticated method like regression to predict the missing ratings based on other features in the dataset.
So it's about choosing the method that makes the most sense for the specific situation and the nature of the missing data.
Exactly. And you need to be aware of the potential biases that each method might introduce. For example, if you just replace all the missing ratings with the average rating, you're essentially assuming that all the missing reviews were average, which might not be true.
I'm starting to see why Google interviewers love to ask about missing data. It's a real-world problem that requires careful consideration and critical thinking.
Exactly. It's not just about knowing the technical solutions, it's about understanding the nuances of the data and making informed decisions about how to handle it.
This is all incredibly helpful. It's clear that Google is looking for more than just technical wizards. They want well-rounded data scientists who can think strategically, solve real-world problems, and communicate their ideas effectively.
Well said. And speaking of communication, let's not forget about those all-important behavioral interview questions. This is where they really try to get a sense of who you are as a person and how you'd fit into the Google culture.
Yeah, because even the most brilliant data scientists won't thrive at Google if they can't collaborate effectively, communicate their ideas, and navigate the inevitable challenges that arise in any workplace.
Exactly. So let's dive into some of the behavioral questions you might encounter and discuss how to answer them in a way that showcases your strengths and leaves a lasting impression. But we'll save that for part 3.
Ooh, you're really building the suspense here. I'm definitely on the edge of my seat waiting for those behavioral interview tips. All right, we're back for the final act of our Google Data Science interview deep dive.
Okay.
We've covered the technical gauntlet of machine learning, stats coding, even product sense.
Right.
But now it's time to face what some people dread even more than those tricky algorithms.
The behavioral interview.
The behavioral interview.
Yeah, I've seen brilliant minds just crumble under the pressure of these seemingly simple questions.
I get it. It can feel so subjective, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are they really looking for?
But Google wants to see beyond your technical skills. They want to understand how you approach challenges, how you work with others. They're building a team, not just a collection of individual geniuses.
So it's not just about being smart. It's about being a good Googler, right?
Right.
What kind of behavioral questions should I be prepared for?
One classic is, tell me about a time you failed.
Yeah.
Everyone makes mistakes,
Right?
but it's how you learn from them that matters.
Mm-hmm.
Google wants to see that you can take ownership,
Okay.
analyze what went wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and apply those lessons to future projects.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I always feel like I have to frame everything as a success story.
It's tempting, right?
Yeah.
But a genuine failure story told with humility and insight can be incredibly powerful.
Okay.
It shows that you're self-aware, that you're not afraid to take risks,
Okay.
and that you're committed to continuous improvement. Those are qualities that Google values highly.
That's a great reframing. Any other behavioral curveballs they like to throw?
Another common one is, describe a time you had to work with a difficult teammate.
Oh, yeah.
This is all about conflict resolution and your ability to navigate interpersonal dynamics.
Yeah, because let's be real, even at a place like Google, not every team is going to be sunshine and rainbows all the time.
Exactly. They want to know that you can handle those situations with professionalism and maturity.
Yet.
That you can find common ground and work towards a shared goal even when things get a little messy.
It's not about pretending you've never had a disagreement. It's about showing how you handle those disagreements constructively.
Precisely. Now remember the STAR method we talked about earlier?
The STAR method.
It's especially important for these behavioral questions.
Right. STAR situation, task, action, result. So instead of just saying, I'm a great team player,
Yeah.
you tell a story that shows them how you've demonstrated teamwork in a specific situation.
Exactly. Don't just tell them you're a problem solver.
Right.
Tell them about a time you tackled a challenging problem and how you approached it, what actions you took, and what the outcome was.
That makes sense. It's about showing, not just telling. Any other tips for navigating these behavioral interviews?
Be authentic. Be enthusiastic.
Got it.
Google wants to see your personality shine through.
Right.
Remember, they're not just looking for technical skills, they're looking for people that actually enjoy working with.
So it's okay to let my geek flag fly,
Absolutely.
to show my passion for data science
Yeah,
and how it can be used to make a positive impact on the world.
absolutely. In fact, that passion is often what sets candidates apart. Google is full of people who are genuinely excited about their work and eager to make a difference. If you can convey that same energy and enthusiasm, it'll go a long way.
This has been such an insightful deep dive into the world of Google data science interviews. I feel like I've learned so much, not just about the technical aspects, but also about the culture and what they're really looking for in a candidate.
I'm glad to hear that. Remember, preparation is key. Practice your coding skills.
Right.
Brush up on your stats and ML concepts, and think deeply about how you can apply those skills to solve real Google-sized challenges.
And don't forget to practice those behavioral stories.
Right.
Using the STAR method to showcase your strengths and your unique experiences.
Exactly. And most importantly, be yourself.
Okay.
Google is a place that values diversity of thought and welcomes people from all backgrounds. Don't try to be someone you're not. Let your authentic self shine through. And who knows, maybe we'll be doing a deep dive into your successful Google interview story someday.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
To everyone out there prepping for their Google interviews, we wish you the best of luck. Remember, you've got this.
And remember, even if the Google interview doesn't work out, the skills and knowledge you've gained in the process will be invaluable in your data science journey.
So true. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep that passion for data alive. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.